When I restarted the series Presidents and Civil Rights, there were presidents that immediately came to mind. And this one was number one. I'm referring to Ronald Reagan. Reagan was the president of my childhood, so I was consciously aware of what was going on during his presidency. And I'm going to try not to be biased one way or the other during our discussion, but I can't make any promises. Y'all know I get worked up. Okay. One thing, unlike the other presidents, there will be a separate discussion for LGBTQIA plus. I feel that in this case it's warranted considering that the AIDS epidemic occurred during the Reagan administration. Uh, a lot happened, or in this case, did not happen. And when we talk about civil rights, it's more than just Black civil rights, even though our discussions are primarily Black civil rights. Sometimes we dabble in other civil rights, but it's primarily Black civil rights. With Reagan, though, I do want to call out LGBTQIA plus and the AIDS epidemic. That will be a separate conversation once we're done with the main body of Reagan and civil rights. Okay? Okay. Now, let's begin. Reagan was born in Illinois in 1911. He worked his way through Eureka College and graduated in 1932. In 1937, he moved to California. He had successful careers as a radio sports announcer, Hollywood movie actor, and a television host. Commissioned a cavalry officer at the outbreak of World War II, Reagan was assigned to an Army film unit based in Los Angeles, where he spent the rest of the war making training films. Reagan entered politics in 1962 and was elected governor of California in 1966, serving 8 years. He ran unsuccessfully for president in 1968 and 1976, but in 1980, during a time of U.S. economic troubles and foreign policy difficulties, he won the Republican presidential nomination in contest with George H.W. Bush and others, and defeated incumbent President Jimmy Carter, who really just got a tough break and was too nice to be president. That's just my own personal opinion. Reagan would serve 2 terms until 1989, the year before I graduated from high school. Now, every Black person I've ever spoken to hates Reagan. Every LGBTQIA plus person I've ever spoken to hates Reagan. And there's a good reason for it. Let's get into it, shall we? Yeah. Now, before becoming president, Reagan was a liberal. He was. The entire Reagan family supported Franklin D. Roosevelt for president in 1932 and backed the New Deal. He voted for FDR each of the 4 times he was elected president. Reagan aligned with the dominant faction in the Democratic Party, anti-communist liberals, whose ranks included Harry S. Truman, who brought a civil rights platform to the Democratic National Convention, forcing 35 delegates to walk out and create their own party. Who else was there? Former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, who tried to get her husband FDR to back an anti-lynching bill, and Senator Hubert Humphrey, who was really a liberal when it came right down to it. At this time, the Democratic Party was moving more to the left, while the Republican Party was moving more to the right. Things changed in the 1950s. Reagan identified more frequently with Republicans. Remember, they were moving more to the right. He saw that the National Democratic Party was moving too far to the left. In 1962, when Nixon ran for governor of California, Reagan supported him and this time changed his registration to Republican. Reagan's political conversion in part reflected the change in his economic status. You see, in 1945, his agent secured him a 1 million multi-year contract, more than 11 million in today's dollars, and Reagan became financially well off for the first time in his life. In a day when marginal tax rates were the highest in U.S. history, and individuals were not allowed to average their income. Reagan resented paying high taxes. It was a short step from there to the view that the federal government was violating his freedom. Additionally, his wife's conservative political views helped encourage him to drift to the right. But I'm sure most of this had to do with money. Some of Reagan's personal beliefs. He opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 on the grounds that specific provisions of the law infringed upon the individual's rights to private property and to do business with whomever they choose. The act ended legal discrimination against blacks at hotels, restaurants, and department stores. It also made discrimination illegal in hiring. In 1965, however, Reagan switched positions and stated that he favors the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and that it must be enforced at gunpoint if necessary. He changed his mind. In 1966, Reagan stated in that if an individual wants to discriminate against Negroes or others in selling or renting his house, he has a right to do so, even though such prejudice is morally wrong. Regardless, he supported the statute which prohibits racial discrimination on public accommodations and facilities, promised that he would use the power and prestige of the governor's office to ensure civil rights for everyone, and sought to put an end to the cancer of racial discrimination. In 1967, Reagan signed the Mulford Act into law, which banned the carrying of loaded weapons in public in the state of California. While California was an open carry state when the Black Panther Party began lawfully open carrying and monitoring law enforcement for police brutality, bipartisan calls for increased gun control came from the California state legislature. Funny how that happened. Was it a coincidence? Huh. The law was controversial as it was retaliatory against the Black Panthers. But Reagan defended the law, saying that he saw no reason why on the street today a citizen should be carrying loaded weapons. Well, tell that to the Supreme Court, because they said that any law about a concealed weapon violates the Second Amendment. So, they disagree with you. Anyways, tomorrow we'll discuss Reagan, his presidential campaign, and his presidency. Thank you for joining me.